This video is going to look at the impact of animal agriculture on the environment. Animal agriculture is both growing livestock and also growing feed crops that we feed to the livestock. So farms grow livestock for meat, but also for eggs and for milk, and then other products as well, like leather and wool, etc. as well. And so this video is going to look at some of the environmental impacts of animal agriculture. So when land is used for livestock and for feed crops, it usually involves the removal of trees, removal of the big trees in that ecosystem. Big trees with big roots that hold the soil together. So we have land clearing. Now, a couple of issues with land clearing. One is that these trees are big carbon sinks, aren't they? They're carbon fixers. So we're removing these giant carbon fixers. So we have a reduced photosynthesis capacity. We also have reduced the ability to retain soil. And if you don't have the soil retained by trees, when we have rain, we have runoff. So not only do we have water running downhill, but that loose topsoil also runs downhill as well. And that can also be a problem because that soil is most likely contaminated, but more on that in a minute. So if we've got reduced soil retention, we get erosion. And that topsoil goes down into another ecosystem downstream. Another thing with our animal agriculture is if we're growing things like cows, we are introducing loads of nitrogen rich waste. So basically wee and poo that's high in nitrogen that also gets run downstream as runoff. As well as that, our animals that are consuming the feed crops through their process of digestion are releasing methane, CH4, methane gas, through their flatulence, through their burps. And that is a significant greenhouse gas. It's a much stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So we have got greenhouse gases. So it's a double whammy really, because not only have we removed our carbon fixers, we've actually introduced organisms that actually increase the greenhouse gases. So it's a kind of like a double whammy. Now, as well as this, these animals are fed and injected with and sprayed with insecticides. They're fed antibiotics and hormones sometimes. And so these molecules, these chemicals, are then passed in feces and urine, and then again run down through the through runoff down into other ecosystems. But as well as that, in the food chain, well, humans actually consume this meat. So that meat, it's a chop. That meat, we might well have biomagnification of the insecticides or the pesticides, of the antibiotics and the hormones. So poisons and toxins. Because of biomagnification, whilst we know that with as we step up the ecosystem, as we step up the trophic levels, the energy in the ecosystem decreases. However, we get biomagnification of the toxins. There's more in each level of the ecosystem. So of course we've removed trees and we've removed biodiversity. Biodiversity occurs when you've got loads of different organisms living in that area. But we're removing that and we're putting in a monoculture. So a crop, wheat or barley or corn, we've got a monoculture here that we grow. So when you have a monoculture, you remove that biodiversity that keeps the ecosystems in check. So if you bring in just one crop, well, it's going to introduce or encourage the introduction of the pests or the organism that actually eats that crop. So unwanted insects and pests. So of course the farmer then has to spray with herbicides to control those pests. And of course those herbicides then get they're on the crops that get fed to the animals that then get biomagnified up to the humans. As well as that, they run off downstream into the waterways. So that's the problem with monoculture, is that it introduces or encourages the pests or encourages the organisms that naturally prey on that crop. Now, the other thing with this feed crop is it takes a tremendous amount of water to grow crops. So there's a high water usage. Now that water usage may well be from underground sources. It might be from creeks and rivers that gets pumped out by the farmers. And so we've got this massive usage. So we've got this high water usage. Finally, we need to talk about what's happening downstream. So again, we've got biomagnification because we've got these chemicals, insecticides, the antibiotics, the hormones that are running downstream into waterways. And then they're taken up by producers in the waterways, which are then eaten by the consumer, fish, etc. And so we get this biomagnification. As well as that, we can run the risk of getting what's called eutrophication. So nitrogen-rich waste that runs down into waterways. Nitrogen is a potent nutrient for the growth of producers. So if you've introduced all these nutrients, nitrogen-rich nutrients into the water, then we're going to have an increase in the producers in that area, and which is frequently algae. So you get this algal bloom. But when that algae dies, it gets decomposed at the bottom of the water, and that takes the oxygen out of the water to feed the bacteria that are decomposing the algae, such that it takes all of the oxygen out of the water, and we end up with a dead zone. So more on eutrophication in another video, but you get these things called dead zones where there's no oxygen left in the water because there's too much nitrogen. So that's just some of the ways that animal agriculture has an impact not only on that ecosystem, but the downstream ecosystems, and then also how it can affect our health as well.